Brandon, I'm just going to do a quick kind of overview before we get started. I'm not sure if we have any other folks joining. Please know if you have an AI device that you wanted to join the meeting, we have declined that participation of your AI device. This meeting is recorded and it will be available in Canvas shortly following our time together this morning.
Thanks, Sarah. This is Brandon with the Charter Authority. So we'd like to welcome you today to our brand new training on Infinite Campus coding. We've typically had new school trainings in various areas, and I think we've seen that this could be helpful potentially for new schools, because we know that there are some Infinite Campus provided trainings that may not be Nevada specific, that you are working with Infinite Campus on and maybe paying them for training, but maybe not Nevada specific. And the NDE doesn't always provide training that is specific to charter schools. So this is the reason we are doing this new school training this year. So welcome. We do see a few people on the call that if you could just note either in the chat or over audio where you're from. We see Angela Hollingsworth, Barbara Smith, Jody Radford, and Shay McGee. I think we know that Shay is from Do and Be, and Barbara is from Thrive Point. We're not sure about Angela and Jody.
This is Jody, and I am from Thrive Point as well.
Okay, thank you, Jody. All right, Angela, if you could put in the chat where what school you're from, that would be great. We also see Siobhan, who I believe is from Rooted.
Angela and Barbara are also from Thrive Point.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry. All right, we'll get this started here. All right, so overview of the presentation today. Hopefully the outcome at the end is that you gain a high-level understanding of required Nevada practices and coding in Infinite Campus, and then also know where to find additional information and or help with Infinite Campus if you need that. So that aligns with the agenda today. So we're going to talk about the importance of Infinite Campus and the data that are in there. And then we're going to go to some specific areas of Infinite Campus, including district and school information, and then student enrollment, student coding, course coding, other useful Infinite Campus topics that maybe don't fit into any of those other buckets above, and then a few resources. Regarding the importance of Infinite Campus is the statewide information system, sometimes referred to as the SIS, that is required to be used by all Nevada school districts and charter schools. The data in Infinite Campus are used for multiple purposes. The first is federal and state reporting. That includes data that are provided to the annual Nevada Department of Education Validation Day, which is the official Nevada student enrollment count, also the Nevada school star ratings, and the Nevada report card. So some pretty high stakes data in there in those areas. Infinite Campus data are also used to provide or administer federal and state funding. That includes Title I, Title II, Title IV, which are all tied to FRL enrollment, McKinney-Vento, which is tied to homeless student status, and then also the Nevada Pupil-Centered Funding Plan, or the PCFP, which includes base funding that is tied to quarterly average daily enrollment, and then as well as weighted funding for students with certain statuses. So you can see that the funding is tied to a lot of data in Infinite Campus that needs to be accurate in order for you to receive accurate funding. And then the data from Infinite Campus are also used for distribution to vendors. One example is assessment vendors, so that appropriate students can be loaded to systems, for example, the statewide assessment systems, and or materials can be sent to school sites, for example, again, assessment materials being sent to your physical location. So taking all that above into account, it's very important to follow required practices outlined by the NDE to ensure alignment of data and also processes across Nevada to ensure accurate reporting and funding. So the first topic we're going to discuss is district and school information in Infinite Campus. So it is very important for SPCSA schools to keep district and school information in Infinite Campus up to date, as data in these areas are used for various purposes, including but not limited to their state and federal reporting, the annual NDE school directory, again, informing vendors such as assessment vendors of school addresses and contact information, and then via grade configurations that are set up, determining how the school will be rated under the annual Nevada school rating system, the star ratings. And then also these data are used for identification of school program participation, such as Title I, Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP, and then the National School Lunch Program, or NSLP. So hopefully this is visible. It's a little small on my screen, but we will provide the presentation after this as well, so that you can zoom in if you need to. But this is what the district information area looks like in Infinite Campus. There are some fields that are grayed out that you cannot edit. Those are state-owned fields. And if you do want to edit those for whatever reason, a request must be made of the SPCSA and the NDE to update those fields. There is some other basic information that you can edit and that you should edit and enter. So there's basic information about the district, which in this case is the charter holder. And in there, you need to put the contact information for various contacts, including SPED, assessment, and nutrition directors. You can access that by scrolling down in this area. If you do operate only a single campus, and I believe all the new schools this year will be just a single campus, the district information will typically be the same for the school information area seen on the next slide. But if you do end up operating multiple campuses, the district information here might include contact information for perhaps a central office where maybe there is a SPED director that oversees multiple campuses. And maybe each campus has a SPED director as well. So moving to school information, this area requires certain contact info be entered, very similar to the district information area. And there's items like school address, principal, and test director. So again, with single site schools, this will probably be the same between the district and school information. And then there's information on the grade configuration, which is important for reporting and star ratings. This is in the middle here. If a school is adding grades annually, you want to make sure you update this area annually so that NDE has the most up-to-date information on what grades you are serving. So there are a few areas under the grade configuration. The low and high grade is state-owned. NDE puts that in based on information that we, the SPCSA, provide to them when we are requesting new schools be added to NDE systems. If that does need to change for say in future years when you're adding grade levels, a request must be made of the SPCSA and NDE to update that. We, the SPCSA, generally try to keep this up to date and work with NDE to do that on your behalf. But it would be helpful if you could maintain that in the future as well. The level area can be modified by the school, so this is not state-owned. Level 1 is your elementary school configuration. It should always be within the K-5 span. Level 2 is middle school, always within the grade 6-8 span. And then level 3 is high school, always within the grade 9-12 span. So this is basically to just indicate what grade levels you serve for elementary. So say you are opening as K3, you would just check the level 1 box, and your low grade there would be kindergarten, and your high grade would be 3. I do see a question here from Barbara. Go for it.
Hi, sorry to interrupt you. I'm on our site right now and I cannot make those changes, and we don't have that information. Should I contact you later after this meeting, or should
Yeah,
I
good
be able
question.
to
So
do it?
I think the latest we've heard from NDE is that the Infinite Campus sites for our new schools are ready or almost ready to access and such. So there might be a bunch of information that is not yet fully fleshed out or not available. We will look into that with Infinite Campus and the NDE for our new schools and see what we need to do in those areas. Because you should be able to, I think we have the same permissions as school staff. So depending on what we can see and what we can do, it's probably similar for school staff. So we'll look into that and get back to you on that. That's a good question, and thanks for bringing that up. That
Okay,
it's not
thank you.
not yet ready, perhaps. The other areas below under school information, again, are state-owned. You cannot change these, but in order to update the Title I National School Lunch Program, or NSLP or CEP status here, you do need to make a request of the SBCSA and NDE. Usually that requires supporting evidence. For example, I think in years past, if a school wanted to update the National School Lunch Program checkbox, NDE needed a letter stating that the school was participating in that, an official letter. Okay, so that covers the district and school information and the importance of that information and how NDE uses it. So moving to student enrollment. You might have got some of this information in training from Infinite Campus. We're not exactly sure what Infinite Campus provides. We have asked, but don't have that information. So hopefully it's not too similar. But when you are enrolling new or transferring students, you must first use the student locator tool to determine whether the student already exists within the Nevada Infinite Campus system. So that tool is located here under student information. If you don't follow this process and create a new student record, that can result in duplicate student records across various districts or schools, and that can require a lot more work later to merge those records. So please always use the student locator when you are enrolling students. This is what the student locator tool looks like. You have to put in some information for search. So typically you'll put in, I think you have to put in the last name, first name, and gender. If you have other information that can help. Once you search, it comes up with a list of students and a percentage match. And hopefully you get a match that's 100%. You can hover over that match, as we've shown here on the slide, to see the last known enrollment, which can help you further determine if that is the student you are looking for, based on information the student and or family might have supplied during registration. For example, they might have told you what school they were at previously or where they're coming from. So that can help. If it is the student you're looking for, you can click on that match, and that will start creating a new enrollment at your school, which I think is shown on the next slide. But if you don't locate the student, for example, if they're out of state with no prior Nevada records, you can create a new student here. But again, you should always use this tool first, because maybe the student was in Nevada previously, left the state, and then came back. So if you have a student from out of state, there still might be a chance that they have a Nevada record. So once you've clicked on a record out of the student locator, this is an example where the student has been found using the student locator. So as you can see here at the top, the state ID is pre-filled. So that shows the existing state ID or SUID. If you are creating a new student, I believe this shows as pending, or maybe it says automatically generated. And then there's a bunch of information that you need to fill in. There are fields that are starred and in red that you need to fill in. Again, if it is a student that was previously in Nevada, some of this will be filled in, like their last name, first name, potentially gender and birth date. But you do need to refill the race ethnicity information. And moving further down, kind of sequentially, you should fill in the birth country, and then also that includes students that were born in the U.S. And this is important for immigrant data collections that you will need to do later. So it's good to put this information in now and have it for access later. For students not born in the U.S., you do need to put in a date entered the U.S. and or a date entered a U.S. school. If you are transferring a student over, say you found them in the student locator, that should transfer that information. But if it's a new Nevada student, this must be entered. Moving further below here, you have to put in some information about languages spoken. So charter holders must collect a home language survey as part of enrollment registration, and language information needs to be entered here. And depending on the home language that is returned in the survey and the existing EL status, the student may need to be given WIDA screener to determine EL status. And we talk about that a little bit more under the EL coding section of this presentation later. And then one last point, when you are creating students, you also want to make sure to add and update family members and or guardians under the census area of Infinite Campus. And that can help you with contacting families, knowing family information and such. Okay, so additional information that comes with the creating an enrollment is start status, start date, and generally you want to put a service type of primary in, unless the student is only enrolled for something specific like music. Say they're homeschooled and they're only coming to your school for music, or they're at another school and maybe coming to your school for music. The start status should be E1. Other start statuses are rare, except possibly R2. So the start status basically says what kind of student enrollment is it. E1 is just the regular student enrollment. You might have other start statuses, but they are very rare. For example, there are other E4, E5, E6, ranging from things like student is homeschooled, student lives out of state, but attends in-state, student is a part-time enrollment, those kind of things. So E1 is the one that is 99.9% of records across Nevada. Further below, there are state reporting fields with some information that is also important for various reporting. There is information for gifted and talented. I'm not sure if any of our new schools are going to have those programs, but you might see students transferring over that potentially have a box checked here. For example, maybe they were identified as gifted, talented, and maybe have a status, but you probably won't have served by a certified teacher or gifted served checkboxes checked if you don't have a gifted and talented program. There is a box for whether the student is a foster student, and there also is a data point for resident district, which is required to be entered. This is important for Nevada student funding, where different districts get different per pupil funding base amounts. So you do have to put in the district where the student is residing. And typically, I think all of our new schools this year are physically located in Clark County, so the resident district will likely be O2 or Clark for all of your students. If you do have any students taking the Nevada Alternate Assessment, this is in lieu of the SBAC or ACT. This is for the assessment for students with the most severe cognitive or disabilities. So that must be checked. It can help identify schools that need those assessment materials. So once you've enrolled a student using the student locator or creating a new student enrollment, a records transfer should be requested if the student has previously been enrolled in Nevada. And I say that you can request a records transfer through Infinite Campus if the student's been previously enrolled in Nevada. If they are from out of state, you still want to get a records transfer. It might be a paper copy or electronic copy of records. But if you do it through Infinite Campus, this can help you get transcripts, behavior information, health information such as immunizations, etc. It can also help you determine whether the student has an IEP that transfers over and or is an ELL. And then after records are released, schools may need to manually import certain records that are transferred by clicking on that record. So once you get that records transfer confirmation, it'll probably say all of this is transferred. You might need to click on a few of those pieces to ensure that happens.
Brandon, Shay had a question in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. The question is, want to clarify that schools have their own district number and will not select their district. Yes, so the NDE has created district codes and also school codes for each school that we've shared previously with whoever was the school leader at the time. So we might need to share those again, seeing as there might be some new people involved. So that will all be pre-populated and such in the district and school information area. I think if we go back, for example, on this area here, it says at the top, district name, Civica Academy. This is one of our current schools, and this master district code 110. So those are created by the NDE, and you don't have to create or put that in. But when it comes to resident district, that will be the district that students reside in. So if you are a school in Las Vegas and the student lives in Clark County, that is what you'll put in Clark County. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. We don't put in our district. Okay, thank you.
No, and this is all based, this information is for the pupil-centered funding formula or plan, where different counties across, depending on where the student resides across Nevada, which county they reside in, those counties get different per pupil funding amounts. So if you have a student that potentially has a main residence in Nye County, you might get a different per pupil funding amount for that student.
Perfect.
So that's
Thank
why
you.
it's important to put that in. Thank you, Sarah. District of residence is the county the student resides in. We talked about records transfers and requesting those and what to do once that rolls in. You must also periodically monitor records requests or record transfer requests from other districts and schools and release those as appropriate within a reasonable amount of time. And we say 10 days. 10 days is actually state regulation if you have a student with an IEP. So you'll see in your message center, sort of when you log in, I think this is kind of the default page that you see when you log in. There's a message center. There's a bunch of requests here as one example, request for you to release. And you click on that request, it brings up a little student records transfer box, and you can release those records by clicking on the release records box. And again, you only really want to do this if you know the student has withdrawn or plans to withdraw. Sometimes you might get a request from another school, and you believe that the student is still enrolled at your school, but without official notice from the parent or guardian or family that the student is withdrawing, you don't really want to release records unless you know for sure. I see a question from Barbara. Go for it.
Yes, so just going a little bit back, you show us that we can find the student by using the student locator wizard, and the Infinite Campus team been asking me to log in all the students we have, their contacts, and create the households, and also enrolling them. But I've been trying to look for the students, and it looks like my system is still not connected to the state of Nevada, so they are not showing. Should I just wait to enroll the students, or what do you recommend? Should I just enroll them,
Yeah, that's a good
create the
question.
households and everything?
Good question. Following this presentation, we will check with NDE today to see what might be happening with that. Because again, what we've last heard is that the Infinite Campus instances for each new school have been set up and are sort of ready. But I think from what we've seen is they maybe not be linked to the state system yet, and maybe don't have all the information needed to do these kind of things. So we'll look into that and see what the status is and update all of you after the presentation at some point. So I would wait for now.
Okay. Okay,
Because
because they
if you-
gave me a deadline, and I was kind of worried because I started asking them about the state ID and all of that, and they didn't have an answer for me.
Okay.
Um,
Sorry, who gave you the deadline? Infinite Campus or?
Infinite Campus, yes.
All right, well, we'll look into that. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, another item as far as student enrollment or enrollment overlaps. This is another thing that charter holders should periodically monitor and resolve. So these are enrollment overlaps or enrollment records that overlap with an enrollment in another district. These overlaps must be resolved to ensure accurate funding via average daily enrollment. So if, let's say, a charter school has an enrollment that overlaps by 3 weeks with a Clark County school, it's very difficult for the NDE to decide who that student belongs to when there are overlaps and which school should get paid for that student. So it's very important to resolve these overlaps and make sure there are no overlaps. You can run a report. It's called the NV State Enrollment Overlap Report that is available in Infinite Campus to find those overlaps. You do need to, I think, by default, the button under step 2 is selected for district-wide. You do need to select statewide to find enrollment overlaps across the state with your school. And again, if Infinite Campus instances for new schools are not yet connected to the state system, this might not really work at this point for you. If overlaps are found, you do need to work with the other school or district to figure out what the actual start and end dates were for the student and update Infinite Campus accordingly. And potentially work with the family as well, who maybe just left and didn't officially notify you that they withdrew from your school and went to another school and enrolled there. So there might be a few different ways to resolve the enrollment overlap. Again, under student enrollment, another topic that's important are no-shows. Per NDE required reporting practices, if a student no-shows after school begins, the no-show box should be checked on their record, end dated with the school start date, so same start and end date on the record, and then given W3, E5 end status. Again, this is important for record keeping and funding. So you just want to make sure if a student is supposed to come to school and does not, you check that no-show box, update their record. If they come back within a few days, there's some other guidance from NDE here on the slide about unchecking that no-show box and then updating that end date. Sorry, updating the start date and also the end date. As far as end of year practices for student enrollment, this probably not something you need to worry about for a little bit, but per those required recording practices, there's also an end of year rollover process that must be followed. Essentially, when a student finishes the year, they should be withdrawn with an end status W1A1. That basically means they completed the school year and are moving to a different grade level, let's say. So end status W1A1, completed the school year, but not yet done with school, and then an end date of the last day of school. There are some IC tools available, Enrollment End Batch Wizard, which kind of helps you do it all at once, so you don't have to like go student by student and add that end status. And then there's also an IC tool, Enrollment Roll Forward Wizard, that can help you promote students to the next grade or potentially retain or demote students. Okay, so those were a bunch of topics on student enrollment, including best practices for enrolling students and overlaps, no-shows, record transfers, those type of things. So we're going to move into student coding now. So this kind of goes into a bunch of different statuses that a student may have and the importance of entering those correctly. So the first one we're going to talk about is FRL, or free and reduced price lunch. That eligibility must be entered in Infinite Campus for each student on the FRAM tab. If the school is not CEP, so not a community eligibility provision school where the entire school is designated 100% FRL, the school does need to collect FRL applications from families and enter the information for each student. You also need to enter FRL Direct certifications into Infinite Campus, and that includes CEP schools. So every 2 weeks, the NDE posts a file for each charter holder to Bighorn. So that's one of their portals that we'll talk about a little bit later. They post a file with all the FRL direct certifications, and these are students that are automatically eligible for FRL based on certain statuses like Medicaid status or SNAP status. Schools can manually enter these direct certifications based on that NDE file, or they can use the tool, the eligibility import wizard, to load those direct certification files. And accuracy in this area is very important for various federal and state reporting and also funding. Moving to ELL, or English language learners, student ELL status must be reviewed and or entered in Infinite Campus on the Student Information English Learners tab. There's various information that should be entered here, but first you need to determine if the student is EL or not. So if a home language survey is returned as part of registration indicating a language other than English is spoken in the home or with family, and the student does not have a prior EL status, you do need to provide the WIDA screener within 30 days at the beginning of the start of the school year. And if the student does not pass the WIDA screener, you do need to update the program status to EL, enter the identified date, and then enter the models of instruction that is on the English Learners Services tab, which is on the next slide. If the student does pass, you update the program status to not EL, and then best practice is to enter their WIDA screener score in the comments area of this tab so that that information is there for future reference. If a home language survey is returned indicating only English, you should leave this whole area blank. If a student has conflicting information, like maybe you get a home language survey that indicates various languages and their program status is not EL and you think they might be EL, feel free to contact us or the NDE for help on that, on what to do in those situations. I've just seen a message from one of my colleagues that maybe the screen is not showing. Not sure if that's the case or hopefully it's still showing. Can someone let me know?
I can see it, Brandon.
Okay,
I
thank
can
you.
see as well.
Other information that might be useful in helping you determine a student's EL status or prior WIDA access, that's the English language proficiency assessment. Prior WIDA access results are available or may be available on the English Learner Assessments tab. So if you do see that student has taken that test in the past, that can help you determine potentially what should be on here. And again, accuracy in this area is important for reporting and also for funding, particularly with the pupil-centered funding plan, where you might receive more per pupil money for students with statuses like EL. Moving to coding for special education, the SPED fields provide users with SPED status, their disabilities, primary and secondary, and student placement codes. The fields that are grayed out here, they are synced directly from corresponding fields in the student's IEP, which is found under the special education area of Infinite Campus. These special ed fields shown in the screenshot here are on a student enrollment tab. So if you click on a student enrollment and you scroll down, you can see these SPED tabs sort of as a high level determination of SPED status. But again, all the detailed information about a student's IEP is on the special education area of Infinite Campus. SPED coding will appear under the enrollment editor or general enrollment information, as I said, when the student record transfer process or upload is complete. And then to ensure that SPED fields and settings properly report, for example, in the validation day student enrollment count, the official student enrollment count that's done every October, be sure that eligibility, IEP, and or the Nevada SPED data plan documents are complete, current, and locked in Infinite Campus. And if you are creating a new IEP, new SPED documents can be created within the SPED documents, new document area, new document wizard of Infinite Campus. And if you do have specific coding questions about SPED, You're welcome to check the Bighorn Resources folder, the Infinite Campus community, or you can contact the SPCSA. This topic could probably be a whole different presentation, and I'm sure our SPED staff have information on that as well. All right, moving to student coding migrant. This is pretty rare across Nevada, so it's unlike you'll ever have to enter it, but we do just want to make a few distinctions. If you do need to enter it, it's on the migrant area. Accuracy is important for certain funding, but as I said, it's very specific and rare. This is where the student might have a parent or guardian working as a migratory agricultural worker or fisher, and then the migrant status must be confirmed by NDE. This is different from immigrant status, where immigrant status is not U.S. born and in U.S. schools 3 or less years. Moving to student coding of foster. In addition to marking foster under state reporting fields when you create an enrollment, there was a little checkbox for foster that we showed previously. The NDE requires entry of foster information in the foster tab. Accuracy is important for state and federal reporting along with certain funding, Title I, Part A. This is the checkbox that I said you might need to enter or check on the student enrollment record, but also there's this separate area, the foster care tab, that needs to be filled in. For homeless, data should be entered in the student information homeless area, including the start date and primary nighttime residence. And then also the unaccompanied youth box should be checked if appropriate. Again, accuracy is important for reporting and then also important for McKinney-Vento and Title I Part A funding. As far as attendance, student attendance must be accurately recorded in Infinite Campus as it's used for multiple reporting purposes, including in the Nevada School Star Ratings or NSPF. You must set up local attendance codes that are mapped to corresponding state codes under the attendance code setup. Infinite Campus might have already done this for you as part of like handing over Infinite Campus, I'm not sure. But if they are not set up, you should map the attendance codes or create attendance codes and then map them to a corresponding state code. As far as the attendance recording process, that generally starts with a classroom teacher marking the student as present or absent. And then following that, there should be a staff member, maybe like an attendance clerk or registrar. It could be a whole bunch of different people responsible for updating absences with the correct attendance code. And there's an example here. If a staff member receives a phone call stating the student's is absent due to a family vacation, that absence could be potentially marked with the CIR attendance code, which is circumstance for family circumstance, family business, etc. So here are a couple screenshots of what that process might look like. Under number 1, the classroom teacher would record the present or absent status. And then under number 2, after that, the attendance clerk or whoever might next record the reason for absence. In this case, it looks like the student had a medical excuse. And then on the student summary, attendance summary, it shows the reason for the absence on that student attendance tab. Just a few additional notes on student coding and under attendance. In recent years, we just want to make sure you're aware of this because it can affect various high stakes reporting like the star ratings. In recent years, Nevada legislatures passed 2 bills affecting student attendance calculations under chronic absenteeism in the star ratings. So the first bill exempts absences excused with a note from a medical professional. And then the other one excludes up to 5 student absences due to religious holidays under the NSPF. So there are certain codes you must use, MDP for the medical professional notes, and then REL for the religious holiday absences. So it's really important to code absences, not only because it's a required practice, but because accurate coding can help increase a school's star rating under the NSPF. We do have some additional coding guidance that has more detail that's linked here. You'll be able to access that once we post this presentation. The next topic is student behavior coding. Student behavior incidents must be accurately recorded in Infinite Campus because behavior is reported in several different ways, including quarterly and then annually for Nevada Report Card, and then also annual federal reporting. Behavior is entered on the behavior management area. You do have to enter a description of the incident and then also add the event type, the students involved and such. There are very detailed codes about what occurred, so that can help with reporting later on. All right, we are through the student coding section. So I believe there's just one slide on course coding. This relates to SCED codes. Per NDE, certain courses must be mapped to SCED codes to ensure accurate reporting, which is found under course information area. So per the NDE, the courses that need to be mapped for state reporting are all CTE courses, all core courses for 7th through 12th grade, which have a SCED subject area under English language and literature, math, life and physical sciences, social science and history, and then also finally computer science course required for graduation. So under that course information section, you can see in the screenshot here, there are various drop downs for you to select SCED subject areas and course identifiers as an example. Moving to other useful Infinite Campus topics, there is a weekly NDE meeting, Wednesdays at 8:30. Typically, it runs anywhere from half an hour to an hour and a half. This is done by the SANE support team, kind of one of the data teams for NDE that oversees Infinite Campus and other data areas. You can submit a ticket to NDE Fresh Service. This is NDE's ticketing system to request to be added to the weekly invite. For new schools, we'll probably do this on your behalf. We might reach out and ask you for certain information about who do you want to be added to certain systems, to certain listservs, that type of thing. So don't worry about this yet. We're working on that, and we'll get you added as requested. Another useful topic in Infinite Campus is that state assessment results. Sorry, going back, there's a question from Angela. Is that NDE weekly meeting a time to ask questions as they come up? So that weekly meeting is sort of, there are multiple purposes. The first generally is there's an agenda set by NDE where they go over topics that are relevant, perhaps upcoming deadlines or things that are changing in Infinite Campus or updating, or things that they're working on that they want us to know about. But generally, there is a time at the end for open agenda items where anyone can ask questions. So a lot of districts and charter schools attend these calls. It's kind of a collaborative working environment where people ask questions. Maybe they're having issues with something, wondering if other districts are experiencing the same type of thing. So yes, there is an opportunity to ask questions as they come up. The next topic is state assessment results. The NDE annually loads state assessment results to Infinite Campus, and that follows a student record. This is something they've recently started doing, which I think we've found to be, and schools have found to be extremely helpful. Data can be found on the assessment tab for prior SBAC, ACT, and science participation and results. And then it's on the English Learners Assessment tab for WIDA, the EL assessment. It's super useful in determining if a student has met graduation requirements related to assessment participation, because participating in the ACT is required for graduation. So say you get a student as a 12th grader and you're not sure if they met that specific graduation requirement. Did they participate in the ACT? Potentially, you might be able to look them up in Infinite Campus, check their assessment tab, and hopefully you see their 11th grade ACT participation on there, perhaps from another school that they attended the prior year. It's also useful for looking up potential ELs and whether they should exit ELL status. So maybe you get a new student that took WIDA the prior year and actually passed it, but you don't know that, right? You don't know that you should exit them from EL without seeing that score from the prior year that maybe you didn't have access to because you didn't get the score report from WIDA because they didn't take the test at your school. So it's useful for WIDA, and it also might be useful for SBAC, depending on the types of interventions that you may have in place. So say the student was low performing in math, in SBAC, and they transferred to you. And now you have some information on their past performance and maybe the kind of interventions or supports you might put in place for that student. Another useful topic is ad hoc reporting in Infinite Campus. This is a way to create custom reports based on information in Infinite Campus. It's very useful if certain data are needed, but an existing report in Infinite Campus is unavailable. There's more detailed information that can be found at that link. It does get a little bit complex or complicated, but once you figure out how it works, it's very straightforward. For example, if somebody, NDE or SPCSA, asks you for something very specific, you need a list of all the students that were ELL in October of 2024. That's maybe the type of thing you can pull there. An additional topic that is useful is campus community, which you should have access to now, knowing that NDE said that Infinite Campus is generally set up for new schools. This is accessed via the grid icon in the top right of your screen, kind of next to your account area. This campus community is a portal for forums, the knowledge base, and support, which is where you can submit tickets to Infinite Campus. So those, once you get to campus community, those links are at the top left. And here we go into a little bit more detail about each of the links, or a couple of those links at the top. So the first is knowledge base. This is accessed again via that campus community shown in the prior slide. It provides help articles, sort of like documentation with very detailed information on Infinite Campus tools and processes. So if you're not sure how something works in Infinite Campus or how to enter something, there is a wealth of information here that can help you with that. As an example here, I put a screenshot for the FRL eligibility import wizard. So if you're trying to import FRL direct certifications from a file to Infinite Campus, and you know there's a tool for that in Infinite Campus, but how do you set that up? How do you do it? This goes through that process in extreme detail about how to get that process going. The other area accessed via campus community is campus support. This is where you can submit cases to Infinite Campus technical support and view your cases. And this is generally for technical issues that you may encounter. For example, if for whatever reason, you know, your Infinite Campus is still not linked to the state system and we can't figure out what's going on, and this is where you could submit a ticket to Infinite Campus. Don't do that yet because we'll look into it, but it's just an example. The final topic here today is resources. We do have a main SPCSA Canvas page that lists all of the areas that we have Canvas pages for. So many of the SPCSA teams have a page for their specific program areas with detailed information and guidance. Oftentimes there is guidance on Infinite Campus coding under these areas. Another resource is the NDE Bighorn portal. This is where NDE, posts various information, guidance, and required practices for Infinite Campus, including a few that we've linked here. The required reporting practices, so that kind of tells you what do you do with student enrollments, how do you withdraw students. There are also standard IC codes that kind of cover everything from start statuses to end statuses to attendance coding. And there's also SCED guidance. As far as what we do for new schools and getting them access to this, we generally request Bighorn accounts for school leaders, and schools can request additional accounts to the SPCSA, and we request those of NDE. So again, with our new schools, generally the process is sometime in the summer, we reach out to the school leader, ask who might need access to assessment systems, to Bighorn, to weekly invites, that type of thing. So you can look forward to that in the future. Nothing that you need to do right now. The last item I believe here is just resources. So this is contact information for SPCSA team members by program area. And again, this contact information relates specifically to this presentation and student coding in Infinite Campus. So there's the assessment accountability team, the English learners and Title III team, special education, and then Title I. So there's information there. Again, we'll share this presentation so you have our contact information at hand. So now that we're very close to the end of the presentation, just going to revisit the outcomes. We hope that now you've gained a high-level understanding of required Nevada practices in Infinite Campus. Unfortunately, we don't have the time or resources to go into extreme detail about all this, but again, we hope we've given you some high-level understanding and general knowledge about practices that you should be following. We also hope we have informed you where to find additional information on and help with Infinite Campus if you do need that. So we do have time for some questions now, and we do appreciate you coming to this presentation today.